Hello, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Tanisha Beju. I'm program director here at the Committee of 70, and I'm joined by my very esteemed colleague, Jeff Greenberg. And we are going to walk you through our poll watcher info session. So, Jeff, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. And so, who are we that are offering this information? We are the Committee of 70 and the League of Women Voters of Pennsylvania, who have collaborated on these wonderful information sessions. Combined, we are more than 2 centuries old, and our primary belief is that when more people vote and are better informed, that's a win for democracy. The Committee of 70 has been around since 1904, primarily in Philadelphia, but now in recent years extending beyond the borders of the city to across the Commonwealth, with a primary focus making our government more representative, transparent, and accountable. The League of Women Voters, not quite as old, but old enough, being founded shortly before the passage of the 19th Amendment in 1920. And both of us continue to be nonpartisan civic leaders. And together with other partners, we are here to provide folks with everything, hopefully, they need to vote this year and every year after.
So, the goals of this session, we would like you to understand the basics of what a poll watcher does, what a polling place looks like, some basic overviews about voting procedures and polling place rules, and then the grounds for challenging something that you might see or encounter if you do decide to become a poll watcher. And we'll have at the end of each of these sections, we'll have a quick check for understanding, just so that you know, like the very basics. You can make sure that you leave this training with the language you need and the understanding of some of the key concepts.
And I'll just add quickly that the importance of this session for those folks who are thinking of being a poll watcher is, and the reason that we want to offer these is it is important and critical for those folks who are going to be poll watchers to understand what they should expect to see and what should occur in a precinct so that they can do their jobs properly.
Absolutely. I'd love to add on again something that we have shared in our poll worker session, which if you'd like to be a poll watcher, we highly encourage you to watch that one as well. But we say that on election day, the polling place should be this very supportive and healthy ecosystem. Everyone who goes into the polling place, be they voters, assistants, or children who go along with voters, the poll worker, or the poll watcher, everyone is there to ensure that election day and voting is safe and secure. So we are all aligned with the same overall goal, even if you, as a poll watcher, are working in a more partisan fashion. We all still want everyone to have a safe and secure election day. So then, Jeff, do you want to talk about who the poll watchers are?
So, state law in Pennsylvania provides for poll watchers to be appointed by the political parties who have candidates on the ballot and the candidates who are on the ballot in order to observe and, in certain circumstances, perhaps challenge a person's eligibility to cast a ballot at a precinct. Again, the primary responsibility is to watch the election process as a representative of the candidate or party, but they also have another primary responsibility for those who attempt to do get out the vote efforts. And one of the other important jobs that we saw watchers do in my county was to track voters throughout the day. They would then submit names back to the central location of the party for those folks to do outreach to try to encourage people who had not shown up to vote yet to get them out to vote.
So, in a primary, general, or special election, each candidate may appoint up to two poll watchers for each election precinct. And when we say precinct, we mean where someone is registered to vote. So it is a polling place is the building or structure where someone is going to go. But once you go into that polling place, where a voter is specifically allowed and registered to vote is called the precinct. And so there might be several precincts within one large building. So just to clarify for that, each candidate can appoint up to two poll watchers for each precinct. In general and special elections, each political party may appoint up to three poll watchers. But the bolded part on here is that only one poll watcher for each candidate or party may be present in the polling place at a given time. Jeff, anything else as a former election director that you'd like to clarify for this slide?
One of the things I always used to try to use to kind of explain that bolded language because it can feel a bit confusing is that if I am a representative for the Democratic Party, I have my certificate, I am working in a precinct, and somebody else entered the precinct with a certificate saying they represented the Democratic Party, only one of us could be there at a time. So we might have to play rock, paper, scissors to see who's staying and who's leaving.
Absolutely. But it could be, again, just like moving from inside of the polling place to then outside of the polling place.
And the idea of appointing multiple people for an individual precinct is the idea that you can split the day so that you can
Mhm.
have multiple people share the time.
So, do you want to cover again as the former election director, given your, I'm leaning on your expertise here to tell us about the certificate that they'll receive?
So, first of all, two major requirements for folks to serve as a poll watcher. The most important is they must, as our poll workers are required, be a registered voter in the county where they are working. So, just like poll workers can't cross county lines, poll watchers can't cross county lines as well. And even though they are appointed by the party or the candidates, again, the county will issue a certificate that looks something like the one you see here, that has all of the information of that individual for that election cycle. So they will not be permitted to enter or remain in a precinct unless they have the watcher certificate that was issued by the county.
So as some people may know if they've watched our other videos, I'm an elected judge of elections. So for my precinct, I'm the one that a poll watcher would come and show the certificate to. So it's not just that you have the certificate and then you leave it at home. This is a certificate that you're going to keep with you to show on election day. And again, it's just a really healthy ecosystem, making sure that everyone who is supposed to be in the polling place is. This certificate will change colors to make it like easy to differentiate from year to year. So throughout my poll working day, throughout election day, different poll watchers will come up. And then if I haven't seen them already in the day, as Jeff said, if there are multiple who are switching out throughout the day, someone will just show me their certificate. They'll say, "Hi, I'm a poll watcher." I go, "Oh, can I see your certificate?" They show it quickly and it's like, "Great, how can I help you?" And then again, that is the relationship that you'll have. So this is our first quick self-assessment. The reason that we have this here is first, I'm a former teacher and I love any kind of like a check, a quick quiz. Jeff calls it a pop quiz, but this is not an I gotcha. We have a keyword bank and all of the words that you see there are with the goal of having you understand the very basics of poll watching. So if we maybe skipped over something in our explanation, or if you just want to check for yourself to make sure that things landed the way they should, that's the intent of these slides that we'll have throughout the presentation. So I'll be odd, Jeff, and then you can do the even. So number one, the primary responsibility of a poll watcher is to watch the election process as a representative of either a candidate or political party.
Number two, a poll watcher must be a registered voter in the county where they are working and possess a certificate that was issued by the county.
So this we haven't gotten into yet, but we will move and cover this content later. Poll watchers are permitted to challenge a voter's eligibility, but only on their identity and residence in the precinct. Frivolous challenges are illegal. So that's like a nice tee up for what's going to happen on election day. So, Jeff, do you want to cover the overview?
So, as we've touched upon briefly, the polling places, we have a couple interchangeable phrases that we often hear describing the locations where folks vote. And there is a very significant difference to those uses, which unfortunately sometimes are used incorrectly. But we have election districts in Pennsylvania, and in Pennsylvania, or describe them as precincts or divisions. We have more than 9,000 of those across our 67 counties, each with their own set of poll workers or election boards. Those districts are then placed or housed in polling locations or buildings. Many of our precincts are in locations that have multiple precincts in them. And so when you hear the phrase polling location, that is typically the building, and
Mhm.
the election district or precinct is the actual place within that building where you are legally entitled to vote.
Yeah, so for my polling place, it's our local rec center and the park that's right by my house. And then within that one polling place within the rec center, there are three different election districts or precincts. So I have one that serves about 800 voters, and then there are two other in the same room, and they serve approximately the same amount of voters. So the location where you go to vote, if you've ever had the experience of walking into the place, into your polling place location and not knowing where to go, you see a few different table setups, a few different machines, and you get a little overwhelmed. That's because you are looking for your precincts. So then the election board, so that's the we just defined like the space. And so now for the people. For the individual precincts where people are going to vote, once you land on which one is yours, you will see an election board or the poll workers. There are a few different types of poll workers. So there's the judge of elections, who's responsible for overseeing the whole operation. They are supported by several key people. You have the majority and minority inspector. Those are the people with the polling books. So whether those are paper or an e-poll book, there's also a clerk who is keeping a registered list in these yellow books of all the voters who are coming in. And then you have your machine inspector. So ideally, you have an election board of five poll workers. Sometimes we won't have a full board. There might not be as many people, but those are the people who you're going to encounter as a poll watcher. And the one that you are going to be speaking with is the very first bullet, the judge of election. So that's the person who's going to ask for that certificate.
So, Pennsylvania law is very specific on who is permitted to be in the polling places in the polling room on election day. The election board members or the poll workers who are working for the county, voters who are in the act of voting and they can bring children or folks that they may be guardians of with them. A great civics opportunity for our youngsters in Pennsylvania. People providing authorized assistance or language assistance to voters are permitted to be there. Poll watchers who have the certificate issued by the county election staff may be called out to help with a voting machine problem or some other supply issue are certainly permitted. Constables who serve as peace officers in many of our precincts across Pennsylvania are not only elected officials, but are entitled to be in the precinct on election day, although they answer to the judge of elections. So the judge would ask for assistance if needed from the constables. Law enforcement is only permitted within 100 feet of a polling place in Pennsylvania if they are summoned by the county or the judge of elections. So, said another way, law enforcement is not permitted to be within 100 feet of a polling place on election day in Pennsylvania. However, if needed, they can be called out by the poll workers, the judge of elections, or the county to respond to a problem.
And we're here already. All right, so the goal of this quick self-assessment, and again, it's quick, it's just to make sure that you have the language to rephrase the things that we have just covered. Number one, oh, it's so apt that I'm doing this one. The judge of elections is responsible for overseeing the election process and ensuring compliance with the law.
Number two, polling place locations sometimes house multiple precincts in the same room.
Number three, the majority inspector, minority inspector, and clerk assist the judge of elections in conducting the election and facilitating a smooth experience for voters.
And lastly, I don't know if we touched on this, but we will. The
Mhm.
only people allowed to wear campaign merchandise inside the polling place are voters in the act of voting. So our poll workers and our poll watchers, who are both entitled to be in the room all day, are not permitted by law to wear campaign gear, shirts, buttons, or hats, whatever that might be, but our voters are.
And that is really helpful because now we're going to get into kind of the nitty gritty of what that voting process looks like. I love how each of our check for understandings like leads right into the very next set. So overview of voting procedures, the voter check-in process. So uh, even though we talk about an election board and we talk about the five different types of poll workers that we may have, voters usually are just aware of the person who's checking them in and maybe the machine inspector. So the poor me, judge of elections, people just think I give out stickers and fruit snacks. But the
Well,
voter check-in
supervisor.
but that's how you know things are running very smoothly if the judge of election is not needed other than by the poll watcher. But for the voter check-in process, so a registered voter is hoping to be located in that poll book so that they can sign in, whether they're signing on the physical book or an e-poll book. Sometimes for that like check-in process, when a voter comes in, to the polling place into the building. They look around for their precinct. If there are multiple, they find their correct one and they're trying to sign in. Sometimes voters inactive, like they have not voted in a while and they need to sign a form to affirm their eligibility. If you're a first time voter, people should be clapping for you because it's a magical, wonderful thing. But if you are a first time voter ever, or a first time voter in that precinct because you have moved, then you need to show an approved form of ID. And then with the rise of mail in ballots, there are many people who may receive a mail in ballot and then their plans change and they would prefer to vote in person. And so they need to surrender before they can vote in the polling place. They need to surrender their envelope and ballot to the judge of elections. And so these are some of the procedures that, as a poll watcher, that you are going to see and things we want you to understand so that if you see things that concern you, that you have the language and the background to be able to ask questions about.
So We referenced the fact that some voters, those voters who are voting for the first time in a precinct, are required by law to show a valid form of ID. In Pennsylvania, we have more than a dozen, both photo and non-photo IDs that are uh, good for voters to show the poll workers. Again, it's important. The idea is to have an understanding of what is a qualified ID so that if you are questioning whether somebody is permitted to show a current utility bill, you will know, hopefully, if you have access, if you've taken this session, you will know that is perfectly fine.
Absolutely. And it's great to not only like reference these materials, but also to watch the poll worker um, video that we have just to get even more of an overview of things that are expected so that, again, we are all supporting a safe and secure election for every voter and everyone that's coming into the polling place that day. Now, you might see people not being able to vote on the machines as they would like because they might be voting with something called a provisional ballot. So these provisional ballots are given to voters because there is some kind of issue with their eligibility. There is an issue. They do not come up in the poll book, or there could be additional reasons why someone may need this provisional ballot. And so this is something that later on that will it, so I want to make sure, Jeff, I have the best language. So I'm so glad that you're here as an election director. So this provisional ballot that a voter will fill out on the day instead of voting as intended on the machines, who is the person that later certifies or verifies that these provisional ballots can be used?
So during the post-election canvass period, the County Board of Elections will be reviewing all provisional ballots and making and typically at a public meeting so that it is open to the public, and they must confirm the voters' eligibility before those ballots can be included in the certified results.
Love that. I didn't want to mess up any of that language. And so it feels so great to have you here for this piece. And there are definite steps for how provisional ballots are filled out, the privacy that's given to a voter when they're filling these out, and then where these are kept, and also the ability to offer the fact that these should be offered to voters. So all of those pieces as a poll watcher, making sure that people are afforded the opportunities that are needed.
And just to be clear on that point, Tanisha, um, if you are a watcher and you observe this would be a problem. No voter can be refused the ability to vote by a provisional ballot. So if the voter requests it, in fact, poll workers should offer it if there is a problem. But even if they don't, no voter should be turned away without being offered the ability to vote by provisional ballot. So that's
That's what yeah, I
understood.
love that you said that. I say that all the time in my in-person poll workers trainings is that no one who has taken the time, no one who is of age and is registered in the county should, if you made the effort to go out and vote, no one should be refused the opportunity to vote. That is such a great stamp that we should like of a message of it as long as they are of age and registered in the county. So reasons that a voter may need to use a provisional ballot include if you can't find them in the poll book, but they believe they're a registered voter. This one has actually happened many times over the years that I've been a poll worker. Um, Sometimes people like they're like, I was at this wonderful civic engagement event and I registered with someone that day and they remember filling out the form and but they're not in the poll book that day. Also, if people with the rise of mail-in ballots, if someone requests like applied for the mail-in ballot and then it didn't arrive sometimes, or if they accidentally threw it out or misplaced it, or if it's at home and they're like, oh man, I left it at home and I just don't know if I'm going to have the time. Then if someone is a first time voter because of it's their first time ever or their first time at that precinct and they don't have any of those 12 plus required IDs. And then do you want to cover the last two bullets, Jeff?
There are very rare circumstances where a local court might issue an order related to the eligibility of a voter. I can tell you that in 28 election cycles in Mercer County, I never encountered that once. So that would probably be something you would not run into, but it is there to, again, for the protection of a voter who may be legally entitled to vote. And last, an election official, the judge of elections, typically might challenge that the person is not an eligible voter in the division. So challenges can be issued, which we will go over, but only the judge of elections can actually, even if somebody else, like a watcher, is asking for a challenge, again, that is only limited to the judge to actually do it. And voters can only be challenged under two items. They aren't who they say. We're checking or questioning that they aren't who they say they are, or that they are not a legal resident in the division or precinct.
So just identity or residence.
Correct.
So, surrendering a mail-in or absentee ballot, we just went over this, but just with a little bit more detail, things to like listen out for, and also things that you'll sometimes see in people's hands. If they do have mail-in ballots, there is a nice, easy procedure for how the judge of election will, like a voter will go to check in, and then whether it's a physical poll book, the paper, or an e-poll book. It'll note that someone received a mail-in ballot, and so then one of the inspectors or the clerk will refer the voter over to the judge of elections, who is looking for both the ballot and the return envelope so that they can then give them a surrender form. So there are different things that are transpiring there. But if someone maybe doesn't have that, then they need to do a provisional. But as long as people, if you see someone who has that envelope, the judge of election is going to make sure the ballot is there. So there's a procedure for that to make sure that once that is facilitated, then the voter will go back over to the poll book, to the inspector, and be able to complete the process as normal.
And can we go back one
Oh,
second?
yes, of
I
course.
want to emphasize the final point about not being allowed to return the completed mail-in ballots. Just for clarification there, the voter has two options. They are able to surrender the packet of the
Mhm.
ballot and return envelope and vote a regular ballot. Or if they don't have those two items, then they vote provisionally. Some voters think that they can hand the poll worker
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
completed mail-in ballot that's signed and sealed and everything of that nature and then just walk away. That is not allowable under Pennsylvania law. If
Mhm.
they attempt, and you as a watcher are seeing this, if the voter is attempting to hand that mail-in ballot, whether it's completed or not, actually, to the poll workers, their only option is to vote a regular ballot in the precinct if they have the two items, or to vote provisionally if they don't. They cannot, that mail ballot would not be counted if the voter handed it to a poll worker and then left and did
I'm
nothing.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you flagged that because here in Philadelphia County, we now have a list of Dropbox locations that we have out on the table for voters so that, to your point, if they have filled out their mail-in ballot and it's complete, if they do want to drop it off, then they can, and we want to give them that option. But sometimes people are like, it's out of my way. I did fill it out. I'd rather just vote on the machine instead. So that was a wonderful flag. Like people cannot return it. It would seem it, I don't blame anyone for thinking they can just hand it over, but unfortunately, that is not the procedure. So it really is an exchange of surrendering that ballot.
So voter assistance. So Federal law actually covers this as well as Pennsylvania law. A voter with an accessibility issue or disability or limited English proficiency may obtain assistance from almost, and we say almost in parentheses, and we'll explain why in a second, anyone they choose. So unless it's already indicated in the poll book, which can happen occasionally that the voter has already been flagged for needing assistance, the voter and the person providing assistance must complete a declaration form, very simple form.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the following individuals. So let me say this in a way that I hope is as clear as possible. Any voter in Pennsylvania can get assistance, and anyone can assist that voter except the judge of elections, the voter's employer or an agent of that employer, or an officer or agent of the voters union.
Yeah, and so in practice, what that looks like, I have a number of people in my precinct that regularly need assistance, and it's not already included on our e-poll book. And so there's a form that I make sure that the voter and the person who's rendering assistance complete. And the reasons that someone might need assistance if they struggle to stand for a really long period, people that have are very arthritic hands. There's a young lady who has an intellectual disability where the our voting machine is overwhelming because of the number of options, and so she gets assistance just to help her stay focused on all of the different sections of the ballot. And so these are things that regularly occur, and so there's just a form that people fill out that say, this is who is permitted to go inside of the voting booth with the voter, and showing that that we have acknowledged why they're doing it, and that we are aware. So, as a poll watcher, if it is one of your first times and you have not encountered seeing two people together outside of an adult and a little person, you should be aware that people are allowed to have assistance, and that there's just a form that has been filled out prior to. And then the poll workers, like the poll workers on my election board, will often render assistance, and that is everyone except myself, since I'm the judge of election. But poll workers, if someone does not come with someone who can assist them, they can request assistance from people who are working. We're here again already, here again already. So, the goal of this quick self assessment is to make sure you understand just the very basics of those voting procedures so that things seem familiar. And then again, feel free to ask questions of the election board when you're there, because again, we should all be working together for a safe and secure election day. All right, number one, voters can show ID with or without a photo.
Number two, a registered voter located in the poll book must sign their name before proceeding to use the voting system.
Voters only need to show ID if voting for the first time at a precinct.
A voter in need of assistance must complete a declaration signed by themselves and the person rendering assistance.
And lastly, provisional ballots are used when eligibility is uncertain and are counted after the County Board of Elections verifies the voter's qualification to vote. All right, do you want to start with our rules at the polling place?
So, electioneering is a term that we often hear. And what is electioneering? Essentially, electioneering describes somebody's effort to either influence an individual to vote for, which is more common, but could also be or vote against a candidate on the ballot. That is not permitted within 10 feet of the polling room. And we are very specific there when we use the word room, which is the space where voting is actually taking place, where the voting machines are.
Mm-hmm.
What's electioneering? Well, you could be handing out materials, campaign materials, posting materials, leaving materials in the polling room, not permitted. Again, telling voters which candidates to support or not support. Wearing a t-shirt or button that supports a candidate, campaign, or party. Again, there is an exception which we have referred to except for voters in the act of voting.
Yes, so both you as a poll watcher, as well as myself as one of the election board, one of the poll workers who are working, we must stay politically neutral. And that is so that our voters can feel that they are in a safe environment to be able to exercise, their responsibility to and right to vote. So then this is really great. I like the explanation that you've given in the past about distance. Can you do that again for
Absolutely.
people
So
watching?
we talked about the reference of not being permitted to do this activity within 10 feet of the polling room. The reason we like to use this photo is to be able to illustrate that meaning because it's often misunderstood. So if this were our polling place and our voting machines or the polling room was on the other side of these glass windows, then anyone in this picture who was within 10 feet of that revolving door, and I can see a couple, would not be, they would be violating the law. They would be within 10 feet of the entrance to the polling room. If my polling room was in another location inside this building, so I can see some steps there, but let's say there's another doorway, and that is where my voting machines are, then every one of these people in this photo would be in a legally sound location because they would be within 10 feet of the entrance to the building, but they would not be within 10 feet of the entrance to the polling room. So that's the
Yeah.
reason we like to illustrate that.
Yeah, and I think what's so great about this kind of picture is it really illustrates why the 10 feet. With those glass walls, you can absolutely hear everything that is happening, the conversations that are happening. So you want to put some space away, some distance between the voters and what they're hearing. So we really want to make sure that people have the time to reflect, especially when it's like a municipal election and some of these names might not be as familiar, and you're really trying to reference your phone and your list or the papers or whatever, and so you're already really doing a lot of thinking, and you want to be able to give voters like the time and the space they need to be able to do that without undue influence.
We even had a complaint one year in Mercer County, and you'll laugh at this, of a gentleman who was holding the door for voters. He was working outside,
Hmm.
and the problem was by holding the door, he was within 10 feet of the
Hmm.
polling room, which was on the exact opposite side of the door. So we gently asked him, thanked him for his courtesy, but then gently asked him to move 10 feet away from the door.
Exactly, exactly, because it's one of those things where it's not always the intent, like someone is doing something so kind and it's like, thank you, I see you, I understand. And yet we do want to make sure that there is just this wonderful, like little cocoon for our voters to be able to feel as safe as possible. So then unfortunately, I have the more negative side or slide to read. So, harassment, intimidation, and interference. So, hopefully, things that occur on election day are more in the vein of someone unconsciously doing something that, violates the law, like holding the door and being like a little closer than they need to be, but sometimes things can escalate a bit more. So, any kind of activity that we feel threatens or harasses or intimidates voters or the workers who are inside or outside of the polling place is illegal. When we say we want a safe and secure election, we are safe from threats of physical or verbal intimidation or violence. And so, it is incumbent on the judge of elections to, and hopefully poll watchers, to report any of these incidences to the county board of elections, to the district attorney. If a poll watcher were to see something out of the immediate eye line of the judge of elections, a poll watcher can bring that to the judge, as well as going directly to the board of elections our district attorney, really making sure that everyone, poll workers, the committee people who are outside, the voters, we want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable on that day.
And just to emphasize the level of reporting, we always strongly encourage reporting concerns with the most direct source. So in this case, the judge of elections first. If not satisfactorily handled, perhaps then you go to the county board of elections. Again, if not satisfactorily handled by the county election office, you have the right to contact the district attorney's office, which is responsible under Pennsylvania law to enforce the election code. And again, escalating even further, if the satisfaction is not there that the county is handling the concern properly, then you have other options to go through the Department of State or the 866 hotline. So
Mhm.
that's the idea is we want to provide plenty of opportunities for concerns to be reported so that they can be stopped or in their tracks if there is a legitimate concern.
Absolutely. And I like how you talked about, we definitely want to make sure that people's concerns are heard and then also that the incident is dealt with. And so the judge of election is there on the ground. And so making sure to engage with them first so that they, hopefully can jump in and ameliorate whatever is occurring so that they can address the situation and bring things back to an appropriate state. But then if you feel like maybe something occurred that the judge of election is not dealing with it to the way that you think like it should be dealt with, or you want to still make sure that other people have heard about an incident, it's really important. And you are another part of that healthy ecosystem. And we can only get better and make sure to continue to give the level of service to our voters that we want if everyone knows what they are doing and are doing the right thing.
And it's also important to note that threats and harassment and some of the other activities is also perception based. So
Hmm.
your perception of what's occurring might not match the perception of the individual who is the recipient of the action. And so even the perception of a threat should be or can be reported. It may not actually be a threat or it may not actually be harassment. We had calls over the years from voters who were mad that somebody tried to hand them a an emery board to with the candidate's name on it.
Yeah.
And that wasn't necessarily harassment, but the voter was not happy that they even had to interact with the person working outside. So perception is also important to note that you may think, well, whatever I'm doing is not threatening.
Hmm.
I'm not harassing somebody, but the individual who's on the other end of that may feel like they are being harassed. So that's important to note.
Well, it'll be great for you then to go through the prohibited conduct, just so like we can give examples. So it's not an all-inclusive list, of course, but they are some good examples.
So, among some of the things that we might see at our precincts, the folks working outside have a tendency at times to block the pathway, block the sidewalk, or block the doorway in order to engage with voters. Hey, vote for my candidate or vote for against the other candidate. That is prohibited. So there has to be a clear pathway. These folks who are working outside or even inside the room, there has to be a clear pathway to the check-in station. Blocking or interfering access to the polling place or the room is not permitted. Directly confronting or questioning voters, including asking for documentation or proof of eligibility or ID, is not permitted. Uh, Disseminating false or misleading election information, telling people the polls close at 6 p.m. when they're outside, or telling people that the procedures that are incorrect, or the polling place hours, or voting methods. Oh, you're walking around with your mail ballot. You're not permitted to go in the precinct. So people, unfortunately, it can occur. Doesn't happen very often, but if you are not permitted by law to give misleading or incorrect election information. While there is permission, and I think we will go over this a little bit, to carry firearms in Pennsylvania, that does not permit the individual to brandish the weapon or to have it in any way that can be interpreted as aggressive or threatening. Again, perception often
Mhm.
dictates that those scenarios. You cannot record or videotape voters. Um, we say here to intimidate them, but just the act of recording is intimidation. So you
Mhm.
cannot record or videotape them at all. Questioning voters about their citizenship, for example, or whether they have a criminal record or their political parties. You cannot do that. And again, that is seen in under the law as an act of intimidation or harassment.
So then, could you cover the firearms since that's not something that, in my experience in Philadelphia County as a judge of election, that I've had experience with?
So Pennsylvania has very clear laws, legal carry. So voters do have a legal right to carry a firearm. And we had this question raised by poll workers over the years who did have concerns about voters who would come in with a firearm, but they cannot be barred because of their constitutional right to carry from entering the polling place unless there is a prohibition at that location. So, for example, courthouses, school buildings already have restrictions on firearms in those facilities. And if that facility has that prohibition, that trumps the voter's right to carry. So there are restrictions there that can be in place. Individuals, however, who might behave aggressively with a firearm, they can be and should be reported to law enforcement for potential investigation or prosecution. Some precincts in Pennsylvania have elected constables who serve as peace officers. They may also have a right to carry and may do and often do. And so those folks will certainly, as the individual you see here in this photo is one of our Pennsylvania constables, would have a right to carry as well.
And we're back at one of my favorite parts of the whole training, the quick self-assessment. So just understanding generally polling place rules. Um, I'm going to plug one more time our poll worker info video that you can look at just to see some more, to familiarize yourself with some more polling place language, different county Board of Elections might have videos that you can watch to learn even more. So we hope that we've given like a nice overview to make you comfortable. Number one, direct confrontation or questioning of voters, including asking voters for documentation, is prohibited.
Voters may carry a firearm into the polling place if they have the legal authorization to carry, unless the polling place explicitly forbids it, such as schools or courthouses.
Nobody may engage with voters at the polling place. Oh, wait, hold on.
Oh, I think that was photographed, right?
Oh, photograph. Thank you. Where was our engage? I think I was thinking ahead to another one. So thank you so much for that. Nobody may photograph or record voters at the polling place.
It is prohibited to disseminate false election information at a polling place.
And finally, electioneering is not allowed within 10 feet of the polling room. All right, grounds for challenges. So a person is presumed to be a bona fide, qualified elector and must be allowed to vote if his or her name appears on the poll book. So whether it's a physical poll book like the paper poll book or an e-poll book, we have voters go and check in to make sure that their name is there. Voters who are lawfully in the polling place, local election officials, and poll watchers may challenge a voter's right to vote. Such challenges are limited to identity and residence. So when voters are going into the polling place, if they are in a polling place that has a number of precincts, a number of different places to go vote, they are going to go and check in and they are making sure that whether it's the paper or the e-poll book, that their name is there and that you as a poll watcher can challenge who someone identity, who someone says it they are, or if they live in that specific division. So if they are supposed to be voting in that place. Uh, do you want to go through, Jeff, the challenge process?
So again, there is a process in statute. It is the judge of elections who makes the determination, number one, if the challenge rests on a good faith basis. So, for example, I, as a watcher, cannot challenge every Democratic voter who walks in the door. That's not good faith. Or vice versa. I could not challenge every Republican who walks in the door. If the judge cannot determine in good faith the residency or identity of the voter, that voter is permitted to bring another registered voter from the precinct to sign an affidavit vouching for their identity or residence. So I could bring someone with me. If somebody challenged me, I can bring somebody who's registered and they say, oh, yeah, Jeff Greenberg is registered and lives here. Once that procedure is followed, the voter absolutely gets to use the voting system. A challenge voter, unfortunately, who is unable to find a witness, they then are permitted to vote by provisional ballot. And again, if their eligibility is determined, which I imagine in most cases it might be, that provisional ballot would be counted.
So, full disclosure, I have not had, with the number of poll watchers that I have had in my polling place, chatting with me and the other judge of elections at the two other precincts, we've never had a challenge. And so, even though I have seen the challenge like procedure, it's outlined, I have yet to have one of these. Have you seen this play out?
Very rare. I would suggest that the typical scenario would be a situation where I might have personal knowledge of the person. So my neighbor moved away a year ago,
Hmm.
and I might end up being the watcher. I could be a poll worker. And
Hmm.
the neighbor comes in, the former neighbor who never changed their voter registration comes in to vote. And I can say with 100% certainty, you aren't living in the house next to me. I know you moved to wherever. That's typical of what you might see, but it is very rare. I agree.
Yeah, that's the exact scenario that I give often is like, now you know you moved. Like you moved and you're not here anymore. But that has not occurred, and so that's why I wanted to rely on your experience to
And
see.
remember, they can still do a provisional ballot. So even
Mhm.
if that challenge is issued and there's a question about their residency or their whatever it is, they still must, we still must offer them the provisional ballot so that if in fact they are legally eligible to vote, their vote will be counted.
So, what can poll watchers not do? So, poll watchers cannot disrupt or interfere with the voting process. We are not engaging, if you're a poll watcher, you're not engaging or attempting to influence the voters. The person that the poll watcher is really talking to is the judge of election, making the good faith challenges to the judge of election, asking when no voters are around about the count. So anything that is with the voters, that is not permitted. Escalating up to the harassment and intimidation that we had talked about previously, blocking the doors, asking voters for documentation, videotaping them, anything that, just like a good rule of thumb is if it is directly engaged with the voter, that is prohibited behavior. Pardon me. And then electioneering inside that polling place. We definitely understand that the poll watcher, because they are appointed by a candidate or a party by nature, are partisan, and those actions outside of the polling place, at least 10 feet away, are permissible. It is once you get in closer to the voting location that then it is not permissible. And so a judge of elections is obligated, so it's not encouraged, it's obligated for the safety and security of voters and the sanctity of the voting process to remove poll watchers if they start to engage in those behaviors. Now, again, I've had so many poll watchers over the years, and I know them, and it is really like far more of a complementary system where we're all just trying to make sure to get out the vote and make sure that people have that safe, secure experience. So that is not an experience that I've had to have. But making sure that voters feel safe is of the utmost importance.
And there are some protections in place for poll watchers. So we don't want, because number one, they are legally entitled by law to be in the precinct. If there was a scenario, the way we trained our poll workers in Mercer County, first we really would give them a warning. Like if
Mhm.
they're doing something that is prohibited, maybe they don't understand the rule or the law. So we educate them. Please don't do that again. If it
Mhm.
escalates, if it continues the activity or additional activities, we would have them contact our office, and our office would reach out to whoever they were working for. So if they were representing
Mhm.
a candidate or the party, we would attempt to make contact with one of those entities and say, hey, we have a problem with one of your watchers. Can you please correct their activity, or we are going to have to remove them. So we do try to give the watcher the benefit of the doubt. We try to give
Mhm.
them a couple chances. And in the end, ultimately, whether we remove them or not, we might have to engage the courts if there is an issue, if the watcher questions their legal right to be there, which is fine. So there are courts in session for election issues on election day. And if the watcher disagrees with the decision made by the county, they can always argue that point before a judge.
And then I don't know, Jeff, if you heard, but the little dog got very excited by hearing about all of these actions. So my apologies for
Did
the
not hear, so you're good.
okay. She's like, "What's happening? Give them a chance. Give the poll watchers some grace." So what can poll watchers do just to affirm, to make sure, again, that people feel that they are a part of a healthy, positive situation where everyone is like rowing in the same direction? Poll watchers can make those good faith challenges to identity or residence of a voter. Using Jeff's example of, if we know a neighbor has moved and the person is no longer there, but having that good faith challenge, meaning like you have information, you know it, and you're just trying to make sure that everything is on the up and up. The poll watchers can examine the poll book when no voters are present. They can observe the precinct before the polls open. So as everyone's setting up from 6 a.m. on, and then after they close. And usually that's to make sure that they can see the oh my goodness, what is it?
Result, the
Result
result.
tab. Yeah. The result tape. That's what I was looking for, the tape part. So they want to just be able to see how many people came out to vote and what the results were. And then, of course, they can report any issues. So first to the judge of election to try and fix and resolve an issue right then and there, or to the county board of elections district attorney, just to make sure that there is a full report of and accountability for what has happened. All right, I believe this might be our very last one. So, challenges, these are all understanding the grounds for challenging, which is a necessary part of the poll watcher process, or at least being able to understand why you might need to. So, number one, challenges can only be made on the basis of residency and identity.
A challenged voter can bring another voter from the precinct to vouch for them if challenged. If they don't have someone to vouch for them, then they can vote provisionally.
Here's the one that I was looking for with the voters. So poll watchers cannot engage with voters or attempt to influence them.
And poll watchers can observe the precinct before and after voting hours. Said in a different way, we used to explain that poll watchers, as long as they have their certificate, can be there when the poll workers turn the lights on at the beginning of the day until they turn the lights out and lock the door behind them at the end of the night.
It's a long day. So, I mean, if you want to hang out, and I think you might have mentioned either in this video or the other, the coffee and donuts. So you are more than welcome. At least in my precinct, we have an abundance of snacks. So yes, if you're there all day, we definitely want to make sure that you are comfortable and that it is a positive experience because we truly feel that the more people engage with the voting process, the better. We want great turnout from voters. We love when we have a fully staffed election board, having all of those positions filled for poll workers, a judge of election, the two inspectors, a clerk, a machine inspector, just makes the process go so much smoother. And it's great to have poll watchers there from the candidates and from the political party. That way, everyone knows what is happening, everyone feels a part of it. There's no mystery. 17-year-olds are able to be poll workers as long as they have a special requirement of having a form filled out by their principal and a guardian. And even though the 17-year-olds are not eligible to vote, they can participate in the process often as clerks or machine inspectors because we want everyone to see this really fundamental part of our healthy democracy, which is voting. And so the more people are there, including you potentially as a poll watcher, the better. That way, everyone feels really that we have a trustworthy and healthy democracy.
Yep, well said.
So, thank you. So, question for you. We've gone over all of this. If someone's like, yeah, I'd love to do this, what should they do next? I'm going to stop our share. So then who do they turn to actually become a poll watcher?
So there are a couple sources that folks can attempt to reach out to. I probably would encourage, especially if they have had no contact with the parties, they're maybe new or whatever to the process. The best resource to start with would be the county election office, county board of elections, and they will be able to point you in the direction that's needed. The primary resource for folks who want to work for the candidates or parties are the parties themselves. So the party committees, which is either at the county level or the committee people who work at the precinct who are elected at the precinct level. Those would be your primary options to reach out to. And again, it's not always easy finding online contact info for all of those resources. If you have trouble, you can search for your, Philadelphia Democratic Committee or Republican Committee or whatever party. If you have trouble identifying those, always go to the County Board of Elections or the County Election Office, and they will certainly have at least a way for you to get the contact information.
And everyone is able to find the contact info at vote.pa.gov for their county board. So, whatever one of the 67 counties you are at across the Commonwealth, going to vote.pa.gov, you'll be able to find the appropriate contact info. This was so great, Jeff. I love having you as a resource, like being able to have your expertise from all your years as an election director. So thank you so much for your time today. Anything else before we leave our potential poll watchers?
Nothing from me. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all so much. Have a great day.